about the part of being delivered to the devil. I believed in my heart that I was a Christian. I I grew up thinking from what my parents had said is that if you believe that Jesus died on the cross for your sins, then you're saved. And you just ask God to forgive you. So when this demon in 2000 and the end of 2019-ish, 2020 had appeared in my living room, what had happened was I was sitting at the table working on the court case for the assault, and I looked in the living room, and this was after I had been using the YouTubes to rebuke these demons that I knew that were around me. This is where it got really intense. So I stood up. I saw this rainbow on my wall, and I stood up and I walked over to this rainbow, and I'm looking at it, and it was so beautiful. And all of a sudden, a cross started appearing on the wall, a very large cross. So I'm watching this whole thing transpire and in awe, obviously. And then I noticed that there was a manifestation next to me. And as I've explained, that the other little creatures or manifestations had looked like these dust particles, but it was a tall manifestation, and it seemed to have shoulders and a head. And again, I've never heard voices. So I'm looking, and I look at this manifestation and I say, oh, a cross. And then I noticed that Jesus started appearing on the cross, like this image, like, and I looked, and the manifestation, the head of the manifestation nodded yes. And then I looked down towards the baseboards, and I saw what seemed to look like, at one point, it looked like little people were dancing. And I said, oh, they're dancing. And I'm trying to play off that I'm extremely freaked out, but I didn't want to give this spirit the impression that I was scared. So then I looked back down at the baseboard, and the images started getting larger, and I noticed that these people were not dancing; they were ripping, tearing each other apart. And I looked at this manifestation, and I said, "Oh, that's not good." And the manifestation, no, and no words. And I looked over at the Bible across the room, and I looked back at this manifestation. I looked back down, and then there was, now with these people that are ripping each other apart, a serpent, a huge serpent, that dragon serpent looking thing with his mouth open, and these people were being shoved into the mouth of this serpent. And I looked at this man, and I said, or this manifestation, and I said, oh, that doesn't look good. And he nodded no, and he just continued staring directly at me. And again, I heard in my head, not a voice, but just that was going to be me. And I pointed to myself, and I said, me, and he nodded yes. And I looked back at the Bible, and I said, no, I'm a Christian, no. And he nodded no. And I said, yes, I am a Christian, and he nodded no. And then I said, so that's me, and he nodded yes. And I said, when? And he just nodded like this and looked back at the wall. And again, these people are getting ripped apart and shoved into this serpent's mouth. And so then all of a sudden I look, and there's another manifestation of me, and it's like a movie, and it shows me getting ripped apart limb by limb, with, imagine a whole entire room filled with these creatures, demons, and you being the center of that room of demons, that are doing nothing but ripping you apart and doing other things to your body that are right. And then my body went back together again, and it happened again. And it's like within seconds, it was like ripped apart, put back together, ripped apart. And I looked at this manifestation and I said, "Does it hurt?" And he nodded. And I said, "Does it ever stop?" And he nodded, no. And so I, at that point, again working on this case for this assault, my mother had just been taken from me. My stepfather had died. I was again, going through this whole assault thing. There was just so much trauma going on in my life, and so much unforgiveness, and so much pain, and so much every negative emotion you could ever imagine I was going through. So remember, I at this point was also going to kill myself as soon as I was finished with what I had to get done. So I just at that point I believed that God had given up on me, and so it was soon after that I was sitting at the table again and working on this case, and I was seeing these peripheral things constantly, and the chair moving back away from the table, and then I started feeling this pressure on my foot. So the demons were able to physically touch me. They were able to move things. I was in a chair. I mean, so demons are able to physically, and they were doing things to me while I was in bed at this point. So they were squeezing my foot, and I looked, there was a spirit here, and a spirit behind me. They were everywhere. And at this point, I was actually able to see in the reflection of my computer screen what they were doing. In the reflection behind me was there was one point where they took this grate thing, and it was like they were pushing their foot through. My face was going, hammers on my head. And these demons, I've never seen a movie with the things I was seeing. I could, it wasn't something that was similar to anything. These were just hideous, and it's crazy. So at one point I just said to these spirits, I just said, I'm going to kill myself. So the more you distract me, I'm not going to do it until I'm done with this. So the more you distract me, the longer it's going to take me to do that. And so I said, so give me some space. And I looked at this manifestation next to me, and then I started getting really coy, and I said, well, you can't hurt me. I know you can't hurt me. You can't. And he nodded no. And then all of a sudden I started feeling the effects of what they were actually doing to me, and it was a lot. And I just said, oh, I know. So you can't kill me, but you can make me so crazy that I will want to kill myself even more quickly. And this manifestation nodded yes. And so it was sort of at that point I realized that I don't want to die. I don't want to experience what I'm experiencing now if this is where I'm going to go. So it was at that point I stopped planning my suicide, and things sort of took a different direction.